What's up, everyone? Welcome into the Dear Miss Fantasy Show. This is your host, Tara Roberts. We are the official mailbag show. I'm the official mailbag show for Player Profiler. It is Wednesday, April 29th. We are finally post-draft, so we got a ton to talk about here. I feel like I've spoken about this so much that it now feels like the draft was like 5 years ago, but it's probably because I'm trying to wash out all the nasty that came from the draft, because instead of our thrilling, oh my god, we have so many options and deep options and sleepers and everything, we got so many fantasy assets nuked, but there's still some good to talk about here. So we're going to talk rookie values and veterans at risk and more. And I mention every single show that this is a mailbag show for a Player Profiler, and then I proceed to not do any mailbag questions. I'm not going to lie, people. I got a little sloppy, particularly in season, because the chat is always so live. Like, if you're listening on the podcast, we're live. And you guys know I show, if you look on the YouTube version, right? I show questions from the live chat and we answer them. And obviously in season, we get a ton of start-sit questions, right? So I got to the habit of letting the mailbag questions really just be the live questions, right? But I've made a commitment. We'll see. I've made a commitment to actually do mailbag questions. And so I have actually gone ahead and pulled questions from my YouTube channel. So I've got questions, and I also put cute little graphics around them. I'm trying to make the show more visually appealing for you guys watching on YouTube. And then on the podcast, you can feel free to also check out the YouTube as well. So got lots of stuff to cover here because we haven't talked since the draft happened. So we're going to talk all kinds of stuff. We're going to talk about the rookie landing spots, and of course, guys like Jeremiyah Love and Carnell Tate. Some of our deeper options. Of course, ask your questions. I will still be answering them throughout the entire show here. Veteran outlooks, and so much more. And we are just going to go ahead and dive right in. I am going to check out the chat here because I see we've already got some stuff here. Hello to Dan Grimm, to Just Lift D1W, ask George Pickens, will he get traded? Then we've got same user there, Brandon Ayuk. I hope the Commanders side him. Brock O. Beamer, first like. Thank you for the likes. I never asked for the likes on the show. I'm a suspect live because I don't ask for the likes and the subscribers, but those are always very nice if you can do that. So I appreciate that. I always just forget. A little bit of ADD brain. So I appreciate it. Bucko Boomer says, first like, hi Tara, can't wait for your fantasy takes this season. Thank you very much. From 2026 waiver wire picks says, hello, how are you doing today? I'm doing okay. I'm hot. I was supposed to get a new air conditioning installed. It did not get installed today, so it's a little toasty in here. It's a lot toasty. I'm in Houston, you guys. And it was like I woke up this morning and took the kids to the bus stop. It was 78 degrees, but 90% humidity. Houston. I always say it's so hot here, but I choose to never leave. It's the food. You can't leave the Houston food, right? Derek Lincoln in the chat and JP Tay in the chat as well. What's up? Before I dive into the mailbag questions, I am going to go to some of these chat questions here because Just Lift D1W has two things that I did not have in my mailbag questions, but are two things that I definitely want to talk about here. George Pickens, will he get traded? I don't think the Cowboys are going to trade him. I really don't. I think they're going to, which, it's funny because it's a theoretical risk, right? To try and force a player to play on a franchise tag, especially because he already gave you a prove it year. He more than proved it, right? But we've had enough examples at this point of players mailing it in or choosing to sit out or delaying. That never works out in there. It's not something that works out in their favor. Now, stalling into training camp, that can occasionally work in your favor, right? I mean, we see it all the time. James Cook did it a little bit. Now, I will say this. You can look at James Cook and Terry McLaurin. Those are my two favorite examples from last year. Terry McLaurin pushed it well into preseason, too far. And oftentimes that means if you're not with the team, and granted, these guys work out on their own, but it's something about those actual team workouts that just lead to better seasons. Obviously, he was not with team, pushed it to the very last second, and we saw the season that we had from him. James Cook, on the other hand, held out for a contract, came back super early, right? And we had no issues. So that's just, something to always keep in mind as we kind of monitor these players, because I'm sure he won't be the only one here. But I think they're going to make him play on it, which is kind of, how do I feel about it? I mean, the man had a fantastic season. I would like to see him get paid, but I don't think they trade him. Just based off the draft picks and everything, nothing in my thought process makes me believe that they want to go through next season without him as the wide receiver too. Obviously, you look at a team like the Philadelphia Eagles, they clearly prepared to move on from AJ Brown. Like, that's a full prepared plan, right? We don't got that same thing going on with George Pickens. So I think he's going to play through it. I don't think he'll get traded. They're always in contending mode. But you got Dak, and they've done, to their credit, to the credit of Jerry Jones occasionally. No, I'm more than fair to Jerry. I give him lots of credit on the good moves that they make, because they have been pretty slick lately. I'm not going to lie. Their method's not always my favorite, right? But, it's been working out recently. So they've built up strategically. I think they've got a good plan here. They've made the right investments. They keep making the right draft picks. So I think it'll be a good season. They're clearly contenders. I don't think they're going to let them go. So I think we get George Pickens in Dallas, and obviously that affects fantasy rankings because that makes him a top 12 option. We saw what he did last year. It brings CeeDee Lamb's ceiling down, unfortunately. Although CeeDee does get that preferential ranking in terms of being in that top 5 range because of the fact that there's just so many guys after him that have the question marks. Malik Nabers coming off the injury, Drake London with the awful coaching situation and shaky more than shaky quarterback situation. Who else is back there? Rashee Rice and his consistent legal issues. He's in the clear right now. We're actually going to talk about it. We're going to talk about Rashee Rice in this show. There's a mailbag question about that. But there's so many question marks behind him that CeeDee still gets that preferential treatment. So it is what it is. It won't affect rankings that much, but I think he's going to be there. But you also mentioned Brandon Ayuk and hoping the Commanders sign him. That's where he wants to go. And I do think that's the only team that wants him. I think they see the value, and they obviously, the trust level that you would have in Brandon Ayuk would be him in a situation where he is going to be happy. And because of the history that he has with Jaden Daniels, it seems like that's a clear place where he would be a happy camper. So they would feel pretty comfortable with it. But it's a weird situation. I actually was looking at this. I think I was looking at, because I'm chronically online. I was on Twitter and was looking at like a thread and reading comments. I love to read comments on Twitter just for entertainment purposes, right? And, someone was saying, the 49ers have no leverage. Oh, they have leverage because they are more than willing to hold that sucker as long as possible. Because at the end of the day, they're getting nothing out of this. I mean, they can't get rid of the dead cap money. That is what it is, right? They're never going to get any extremely high draft capital out of him in a trade. So at the end of the day, I mean, they have zero problem being petty right now. And I don't blame them. Everyone's saying the 49ers should do right by him. Well, I'm of the opinion that they gave him the big contract. They did right by him, and he still wasn't happy. It's very different. I was thinking about it. It's very different from the AJ Brown situation, right? With AJ Brown, I can understand, even though I'm a constant Jalen Hurts defender, right? And I do like the Eagles for what it's worth, and love Jalen Hurts. But AJ Brown has a legitimate gripe because of the way last season happened. The offense wasn't itself. He wasn't getting the ball to the degree that he wanted. He's got his Super Bowl ring, and once players get to wide receivers get to a certain point, they often get into the mode where they just want stats, right? Understandable. They're trying to go Hall of Fame. They want all of this, right? And the legacy, and they want numbers. And unfortunately, he just doesn't believe he's going to get those numbers with Philadelphia, so he wants out. That's a legitimate concern, right? I think Jalen's a wonderful quarterback. I don't have criticisms, but he wants to get into a higher volume situation. And quite frankly, on an offense with Saquon Barkley, I think they get back to being more run heavy and that Saquon has a bounce back year. So this might look more like the Super Bowl season, which, technically speaking, wasn't the highest, which in the Super Bowl season, he did track for his 17K game pace would have been just over 1,400 yards. So I mean, it's still no real gripe there, but I think the consistency is his issue. And when you can just lean heavily on Saquon, you're not going to have that level of consistency that an A.J. Brown wants. So it's understandable. And for them to trade him, the Eagles have no problem with that because A.J. Brown is a valuable player who, even when he's frustrated, will be on the field, who will be playing. You're not going to have to worry about him being dropped, sitting out, bad attitude, but he's still going to put up, right? Because he's A.J. Brown. And he doesn't take it to that level where you would be concerned, right? So they can still get excellent value out of him. It's a win-win situation for both teams. Both, they can get the capital and he can get out. That's not the same situation for Brandon Ayuk. How can any team trust him? So the Commanders want him, but they're waiting for Brandon Ayuk to get cut, and they're going to be waiting because the 49ers, they're in no rush and they don't care. So that is leverage when you legitimately don't care what happens and someone can sit on your roster and you will have no consequences for it. Why not? And I don't blame them whatsoever on that one. So thank you for those two questions. Those are awesome. What's up to Miles Logan in the chat? Derek Lincoln says, "Oh, I'm jealous. In New Jersey, it was only 65 degrees today." Yeah, it might have got close to 90s here, but we're going to have a cold streak next week, supposedly, and some rain. So I'm looking forward to that. Derek Lincoln also says, hope the Cowboys don't trade Pickens. And then 2026 waiver wire pick says, can Kenneth Gainwell finish the season as a top 5 RB? That one is a good question there. I like that one. Because Kenneth Gainwell is my boy, and he's been my boy since he was one of my favorite little sneaky prospects coming out of college, because I have a thing for running backs that are converted receivers, right? Just because, I love a good pass catching running back. And so when you have that skill set, I love you. I don't know. It's going to be pushing it because I do have his presence, and also the presence of Sean Tucker has me concerned that at the end of the day, Bucky Irving is going to be affected to a level where we need to be pushing him back to the low end RB2 rankings. And consensus seems to be getting on board with that, right? But I don't know if he's going to have the same level of year he had last season, because Baker will check down. So that's not an issue. But I just don't know if the efficiency is going to be as high as it was last season. That's my only thing. So I'll definitely be taking plenty of him in later rounds and whatnot, because, again, he's not just a receiving back. He can be successful on the ground as well. So in a situation of Bucky going down again with an injury, it would be, him and Sean Tucker. Sean, obviously, with the goal line carries, right? So, but I don't know if we can get him that high. It would have to be an injury situation to Bucky, but still valuable. But Aaron Rodgers was checking down last year because they had no receivers. So it'll come down a little bit. That was aggressive. JPTA says, I don't think a player will ever do what Le'Veon Bell did and sit out a whole year and tank his career. Pickens will play, get that 1 year, 27 mil, and earn a long-term deal somewhere else. I think so too. And the only concern that I have, the good thing about Pickens in Dallas is that Dak and CD are lovely people, right? to be around. And so they seem to have a very good rapport, good team vibe. Schottenheimer is obviously a good team vibes kind of guy, right? So they don't really have a toxic environment. And that can help out with George Pickens not getting into a funk, about not getting his long-term deal, right? The only fear that I have is that, if he tweaks an ankle or something, are you really incentivized to play through it? Or do you just want to be a little bit cautious, right? Like, let's say he is on fire through 8 games, tweaks an ankle. Maybe he takes 4 more games than he really should have to come back from that injury, just to be a little extra safe, because at the end of the day, it's his career. That's the only concern I have. But other than that, I think he'll be fine. I'll feel good. Let's see here. We'll do a couple more questions and then we'll get to the chat here. Derek Lincoln says, how do you feel about Skylar Bell in Buffalo? I hate it with a passion. I like Skylar Bell, and I would have loved him anywhere else. I didn't want any receiver. I'm surprised. I commend Buffalo for not doing what everyone was mocking them to do and taking that first round wide receiver. I commend them for that, right? I just hate that they took our Skylar Bell because he showed a lot of promise, right? And that was someone who could really, really be someone as a wide receiver too in the NFL. And unfortunately, I fear the Buffalo offense doesn't do it for me from a fantasy perspective outside of James Cook, but we do need to worry about James Cook regression, just FYI on that one. But when it comes to the wide receivers and pass catchers in general, there's just too many and too inconsistent of volume. When I was looking at it before with Josh Allen, we know that he can get into the 600 attempts range, but that seems like more of an outlier. I don't think that they will do it, right? Because they've done well with the strategy that they've had of not pushing that aggressive volume. And when you need to, when the defense fails you and when you're facing a tough offense and it's all systems go, you have to air it out. Yeah, Josh Allen can do that, but they don't have to. They can lean on the ground game. Josh Allen can run. So the volume is inconsistent. There's no real way to predict it. Skylar Bell is interesting, though, because, when people were mocking, obviously, they were trying to mock someone that was a direct replacement for Keon Coleman. And Skylar Bell is physically not that. He's, not the big-bodied contested catch guy, right? So it's interesting because then that makes me fear, okay, so if you're not trying to replace Keon Coleman, are you trying to make it work with him? And then now we've got 4 receivers that we're trying to deal with. Is Skylar Bell going to push Khalil Shakir out of the slot? Is Bell going to have to split some time on the outside? Like, it's just it's a lot of bodies, right? And then we've got Dalton Kincaid as well. So I don't love it. I didn't want any receiver to go to Buffalo. And I knew that someone was going, but I was hoping it wasn't one of our guys. And sadly, it was one of our guys, unfortunately. So it'll be interesting to see because he's a very versatile player. I would like to see him in the slot, but Khalil Shakir hasn't given me any reason to say that he needs his job stolen. So I think we might see him more on the outside. And maybe after Keon Coleman being such a bust, they just wanted to go with somebody who was just straight up the complete opposite. And that's what they did. So credit to them, good pick. I just don't love it from a fantasy perspective. Easy E in the chat says, hope life is treating you and yours kind. Thank you, Easy E. Hope that for you too. Just Left DW1 says, Gainwell was awesome last year. I can see him doing amazing things in Tampa. JP Tay says, my weekly Tara Show Jonathan Brooks update. He is now cleared and near 100%. I need to contain my excitement. I don't think we should contain it, right? Because my fear was that Carolina was going to take not even a day 2, because we saw even day 2 running backs were just scarce. But my fear was that they were going to take a day 3 running back, and they're willing to give anybody a shot. But we seem to be in the clear that it is going to be Chuba and Jonathan Brooks, and the opportunity for Jonathan Brooks to steal Chuba's job. Well, somebody already stole it. We already saw Rico Dowdle steal it once. So who's to say that can't happen again? Carolina loves giving jobs to anybody and everybody. So I think they have to give him a shot. So I think it can happen. Just got to stay healthy, my man. Just got to stay healthy. But I think they'll give him a shot. So I'm excited to see, because it feels like it has been forever. But he was such a promising prospect, right? I'm excited to see where this could head, especially because, again, Carolina, another team that just keeps making sharp draft picks, right? So I see them continuing to push in a positive direction there. I like where they are heading overall. So, yeah, and hopefully, continue to push the ball more, open it up a little bit, let Bryce Young air it out just a little more, right? We want to get up over 200 yards, have a little bit more check downs, and then move the ball to provide those goal line opportunities. That's what we need. Just left D1W, Deebo Samuel to the Bills. Price go cheap for it. Brandon Beam, but it won't happen, but it would be fun. Deebo Samuel and DJ Moore together would be wildly interesting. I will say that. And then 2026, thank you for answering my question about Gainwell. We'll pick him up on my ESPN fantasy team. There we go. Let's do a mailbag question here. Again, I told you guys, I was trying to get a wee bit fancy here. Yay! Fancy graphics made by me. Woohoo! Mailbag question is Mike Washington behind Ashton, Jeanty, Emmett Johnson behind Kenneth Walker. Do you think there's some, I should have corrected those typos, my bad. Do you think it was copy paste, whoops, less crowded backfields to draft than these two? I am talking about a redraft league. And those are valid questions there. I will say, I'll start off with the one that's easy for me. Emmett Johnson and Kenneth Walker. I feel like Emmett Johnson is another shade of Kenneth Walker, but not quite Kenneth Walker, right? Especially in size. Not that big of a discrepancy, but big enough, right? I don't know if he provides that much of a differentiating factor from Kenneth Walker. And the most critical thing for me, and I do think it's interesting because he can be the direct handcuff, right? It makes sense for him to be the direct handcuff for Kenneth Walker. They profile very similarly. So that's a cute little fit for me. I like it. But the one thing that makes me not so concerned about their backfield is that the whole Chiefs awful committee situation that we had last year and then the year prior, kind of, right? That was Matt Nagy. Eric Bieniemy has not done that to us, and he is a running back coach. And Matt Nagy is the one that I can't. Well, God, you guys know I can't stand. Well, who can stand Matt Nagy? I'm not alone in that one. That awful Chiefs run game that we have seen just being wildly unusable was all Matt Nagy. Eric Bieniemy is not like that. He's a running back guy. So I trust him from that aspect. They'll get this Chiefs run game back on track here. And I feel very good about that. So I feel good about Kenneth Walker. And in an offense with Patrick Mahomes, and obviously we got to have Patrick come back healthy, but in an offense with Patrick Mahomes, I mean, that should just open things up so much for Kenneth Walker to have so many breakaway plays here. So honestly, my concern level with the Chiefs, their offense, the change in coaching, the offensive line, not super high for Kenneth Walker. I feel like Johnson will operate as more of a direct handcuff there rather than what we saw in Seattle, which was the sniping at the goal line and complete removal. I think he's a 3-down back there being supplemented by Emmett Johnson as the backup. And a little change of pace, right? Now, when it comes to Mike Washington, Mike Washington is very interesting, right? Basically anytime I did a video on rookies, I was probably talking about Mike Washington and my love for him, his size, his speed, incredible. I think there are legitimate concerns there about Washington combined with Ashton, Jeanty. And again, that same Seattle offense that we just talked about that set up that Zach Charbonnet and Kenneth Walker situation. I feel very concerned about that. Not to the point where I'm just going to be like, we can't draft Ashton, Jeanty, panic mode, because things are going to go in a positive direction, right? We knew they had to draft somebody because their backups are just not it. It's not possible for them to move forward with that. And Ashton Jeanty cannot play upwards of 80% of snaps every single week. That doesn't make logical sense for a guy that you were having in contract for 5, maybe 6 years, right? Got 5th-year option, franchise tag. That's kind of crazy with running backs. But so yeah, they don't want to aggressively overwork him because they're in this for the long haul. I wasn't too worried before, depending on what running back they added. And I hope my bias isn't seeping in because of my love of Mike Washington. But man, I mean, I got concerns that we are going to see potentially a Ashton Jeanty usage similar to Kenneth Walker, and then but more upside in terms of checkdowns because he is a more prolific pass catcher, right? And then Mike Washington, short yardage and some goal line stuff. So I do think that he might be a little bit of a threat there to Ashton Jeanty, but not so much where we need to panic, fade, and push him back significantly in rankings or any issue like that. But I don't love it. I don't love it, given the coach, right? Who is a great coach, But I do feel like we have to be concerned that maybe we do have him come in and push this more towards what Seattle looked like because it worked so well. Why would you not? So yeah, that's my concern, especially because, and I hate it for Mike Washington. I would have loved to see Mike Washington in Seattle. I would have loved to see Mike Now, Minnesota and not drafting a running back until like the 7th round. That was peculiar. I would have loved to see Mike Washington in Minnesota. I would have loved, yeah, Mike Washington could have gone to Washington. There were so many places. I mean, Jacksonville. I mean, there were so many places that need more bodies and need more competition and need bigger bodies. I can think of so many teams that I would have loved to see him go to. This was the very last one here. He is going to spend his the entire duration of his contract with Ashton Jeanty. Again, because he's got the 5th-year option and the franchise tag probably, right? So, it's just not a good situation. I hate this. We are SOL. He is literally a handcuff. But also, as Miles Logan just commented, again, there could be some standalone value. So I do think it is worth both drafting both Washington and Jeanty in fantasy. For one, at the very least, we know that Washington, we don't know, right? But we can assume, given the rest of the backfield, that Washington would logically be the direct handcuff in an offense that will be turning things around. And by the time he'd be the direct handcuff, I would venture a guess and say we'd probably have Fernando Mendoza starting. But even if it's Kirk Cousins, I mean, running backs aren't really massively negatively affected by Kirk Cousins anyway. So I don't, that's kind of a wash from a running back perspective to me. So when you look at it from that perspective, he might end up being one of the better value handcuffs that we can draft because, again, Jeanty going so high, it's not like a situation like, let me try and think of like a handcuff situation where, no, Minnesota doesn't qualify. Well, let's say that Jonathan Brooks is deemed the starting running back in August, right? And that Chuba Hubbard is the backup, and the Panthers just flat out tell us, which wouldn't be shocking because the Panthers are very transparent. If that were to happen, then Chuba Hubbard would obviously still be a pretty highly drafted handcuff, right? Whoever is behind Christian McCaffrey is always a highly drafted handcuff. Washington might get a little bit of a discount there. So I do think it's worth it to target him in late round drafts just because of the fact that we should assume that he will be the direct handcuff and have high value. And the improvement of the Raiders offensive line helps a lot for sure. Let's see here. I am going to take another question here and I'll leave the graphic up and then we'll switch to another one here. But before we move on to the next question, from JP does Chris Brazzell pick concern you with Jalen Coker, or is he straight Xavier Legette replacement? Which I believe it is. Brazzell does look good though. Yeah, I wish I like him. I wish they had drafted somebody that was a little more questionable, but I don't mind it. I think it's good for them to add another pass catcher. I do think the Xavier Legette is probably, unfortunately, the one that is going to be phased out here. Coker's once Coker really got going in terms of, because you got to remember the start of his season, he missed 6 games with a high ankle sprain. When he came back, he was eased in. Took a little time for him to really get acclimated back into the offense and for them to get him onto the field at a pretty consistently high clip there. And once he finally did, he performed at such a high level. Then we did the playoff game. I mean, my God. So yeah, I still feel very good about him being the second look in that offense. And Chris probably pushing out Xavier Legette. I think we're just going to write that one off piece on that one. And he's versatile. So I don't think that we'll see any concerns on him just being exclusively on the outside, right? So I think I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. But again, we need more volume pushed in that Panthers offense. They got to let Bryce Young air the ball out a lot more, but at least a little bit more, right? But at the very least, I am happy that we didn't get a big tight end pick to there. That might have been a little bit more concerning for maybe somebody taking red zone looks from Tetairoa McMillan. That would be my only issue there. And then GPT, another one there. James Cook, zero competition. Oh, yes. James Cook, zero competition. And this was regarding our question here about the comment we had about, Ashton, Jeanty and Kenneth Walker, crowded backfields and whatnot. James Cook, zero competition. Jonathan Taylor, zero competition. Josh Jacobs, zero competition. That one is one that I really want to really highlight there. And then also you say Bashal Tutin only has Chris Rodriguez to deal with. I would target those backfields. Josh Jacobs is the one that I want to pull out of there because we know Jonathan Taylor and everything that he is. We know James Cook and everything that he is, right? Josh Jacobs is one that I feel like people were kind of concerned that he was going to be replaced this season. And he is not going to be. People, the Packers did not, that's not happening. But I will say this, though, that was critical there, that we did not get a big day two back added to the Packers there. We did have Emmanuel Wilson exit to Seattle. And when we're looking at Josh Jacobs, that's one of my favorite bounce back candidates because his overall season looks nasty as a whole. Like if you look at it as a whole, the statistic, you would say, oh man, the efficiency went down. But unfortunately, you got to remember that he back half of the season got injured and he tried to play through it because the Packers were making that playoff push. I mean, oh my God, they were, competing with Chicago. Detroit was still trying to make a push there. So highly competitive division, all of those divisional games. Then he was trying to push through it to make sure they got through the playoffs. He should have sat. So there were several games in there where, I mean, my God, let me look it up real quick. Well, let me not waste time here. No, I'm going to because I can't help myself. There was the game where there were 2 games where he played less than 40% of snaps and then he did not play the last game. He had 4 carries in a game. He had one game where he only played less than 60% of snaps. There was another game where he did get injured and then missed the following week. He played 22% of snaps in that game. So unfortunately, the overall picture looks crazy because he did play the vast majority of the games. He played 15 games, but there were a good 4 of those that should not count. So overall, his statistics were still fine. He was automatic for touchdowns. It was literally just once he got injured and was on the field playing through the injury, it was just a drain on his stats. So very low workload last season, not a ton of mileage. So feel good about him having to bounce back after a very heavy usage season in 2024, having to come down in 2025, bounce back in 2026. All right. Let's see here. Before we move on to the next question here, from Linda Wells, being a Kansas City Chiefs fan, I'm pleased with the Emmett Johnston draft choice. He will be a nice handcuff for Kenneth Walker. I agree. It's a nice fit there. It's a nice fit because it's not an opposite fit. Now, I feel like we would be more concerned if they went with somebody who was very much so opposite of Kenneth Walker. This feels like you're trying to have continuity there of the same type of running back. So I feel good about that. Just Lift D1W says, who is James Cook's handcuff? Is it Ray Davis? Kick of returner / backup. Kick off returner / backup running back. It is Ray Davis. And it looks funny when you look at it because when all 3 backs of him did Ty Johnson? I just real quick wanted to make sure that Ty Johnson did not actually exit and go anywhere before I say. No, he's good. Okay, still in Buffalo. It looks weird because when they're all 3 active, Ty Johnson does have more touches, but it's because he is the change of pace back. When James Cook goes down, the direct handcuff is Ray Davis. So it looks funny, but it's definitely Ray Davis that you would want. And then JPT says the backups for Jacobs are Chris Brooks, Marshawn Lloyd, Damian Martinez on practice squad. Maybe a sneaky waiver pickup. I was never really impressed with Damian Martinez. I feel like theoretically it should be Chris Brooks, but then also I feel like maybe they at some point go and look at a veteran that's on the market. I don't know, something. But I don't trust Marshawn Lloyd to stay healthy. So I feel like in theory, it's got to be between Brooks and Martinez for sure. So yeah, Dynasty, sneaky little ad there. Martinez was, it's funny. I thought he might be a little bit more valuable in the NFL, but no, just didn't really pan out, unfortunately. Next question here, mailbag question. How does the Cardinals drafting Carson Beck affect fantasy? Will he start? And then we'll do, the next one is related to Jeremiyah Love. So low key, actually, we'll combine these here real quick. This one is a tough one, right? Because I love this offense with Kenneth. Actually, I'm going to remove my banner here real quick. I love this offense with Jacoby Brissett at quarterback. You guys know that, right? Love him. Love what he offers, right? In terms of the pass volume, regularly being over 40 attempts, the touchdowns. Hey, and the interceptions coming, makes it fun for fantasy football as well, right? So I love him, and the checkdowns, which are critical for Jeremiyah Love. So I like Jacoby Brissett for this offense from a fantasy perspective. The problem is that Jacoby Brissett is not going to be the long-term option. I do think that more than likely they will try to draft another quarterback in a better class next year. And because they have Carson Beck, they will factually have to see if they have something there with him. So at some point, unless Jacoby Brissett goes on some miraculous run and they start winning, and because unfortunately his was fantastic from a fantasy perspective and just didn't win anything last season. So unless he goes on a run and is winning games and they're competitive, which I don't think is going to happen, at some point they are going to have to start Carson Beck just to see what do we have here, right? Not dissimilarly from the Dolphins, right? Last year they had to, we got to see what we have at quarterback to know if anyone on roster is worth potentially starting next year. So they'll do that with Carson Beck at some point. That's my only fear with him. I don't think he'll start the season whatsoever. I think we will see Jacoby Brissett for the majority of the season. I think they'll be more than happy to lose because they'll want to tank for a better quarterback last year. But if we're looking at who this could affect, we do have to be concerned about Jeremiyah Love, because now everybody is very concerned about the fact that he has landed in Arizona. And another question here, has Jeremiyah Love lost value? And again, when I'm looking at Jacoby Brissett, and that's why I wanted to tie these two together. When I'm looking at Jacoby Brissett and what he brought to the offense last year, one of the things that I pointed out, and I think I said it in one of my videos last week, the good thing, so the good thing here is that when we look at Jacoby Brissett and his usage, he was operating at a ridiculous clip in the red zone. And I actually want to see if I can pull it up. I don't know if I have it up here. That sucks, guys. I should have been more prepared with the numbers. No, I got it here. So Brissett had 80 attempts inside the 20 last year. For reference for you guys, he had the 8th most pass attempts in the red zone in 12 starts. Logically, if he had played a full 17 games, he would have led the league in red zone attempts. That's stupid, right? That doesn't make a lot of logical sense. But it is because their run game was so terrible. And their run blocking wasn't actually bad. The run blocking was kind of actually right on league average. It was the pass blocking that was really bad from the line. And obviously they have made changes in free agency to upgrade the line. So it's not going to be the same line. And it's not, I know people fear that this is going to be a Las Vegas situation on repeat in Ashton Jeanty 2.0. I don't feel whatsoever that it's going to be that way, because the Raiders line was awful in an egregious way last year. Arizona's line wasn't that bad. It wasn't good, but it was not that bad. And they've clearly gone ahead and made improvements. So it's not going to be that drastic of an issue. I would not see him being below league average in efficiency. Jacoby Brissett also checks down a lot, so that's not an issue there. So there's going to be volume. He's going to get volume on the ground, going to get check downs, and there will be goal line opportunities because, again, those 80 attempts inside the red zone, he can't do that again. If you have a running back like Jeremiyah Love, logically, now that you have a running back, he did that because he did not have a running back. They couldn't run the ball. because they had no running backs and they were throwing out the most ridiculous amount of practice squad running backs that ever existed, right? So he had to throw the ball. Now you got Jeremiyah Love that's going to come down. And so they're going to be in the red zone. There's going to be plenty of goal line attempts. And now they actually have a running back to do it. So I don't really fear this for Jeremiyah Love at all. And actually low key kind of like it because it's going to keep the ADP from getting egregious. We're still going to get him at a nice, decent value, right? Like I saw where somebody, I won't say who, but I saw where somebody was like, oh no, I would take him more in like the 4th round range. And I was like, whew, that's drastic. If we got him in the 4th round, that would be a massive discount. So no, I don't think we're going to have he's not creeping anywhere near the 1st round. Thank God for that. So there's going to be no major issue. Jacoby Brissett will be fine. We've got some comments here. JP says, I don't think he, as in Carson Beck, sees the field. If Brissett plays like he did last year, he was QB7 from week 8. So unless they go 3 and 7-ish, they may see what they have in Beck. Yeah, as long as it's not destitute. But even if it's destitute, I feel like they're okay with tanking. Mind you, this is a first-year head coach. His job is not at risk. And I would assume that they would want to, even if Beck is like, does anyone really want Beck as their franchise quarterback? I would assume regardless, they still want to dip into the quarterback pool next year. And if they can do that with a top pick, yeah, 100%. So, I mean, I don't like it's going to be, he'll start at some point, but I don't think it'll be right off the bat or even halfway through the season, right? And then also JPT says not worried for Love. Even Jahmyr Gibbs had a modest start to his career, but finished RB4 by the end of the season. Love should easily be top 10 with the talent that he has, for sure. For sure. I think the only concern that people have is, Tyler Algier and the way that he sniped touchdowns last year from Bijan Robinson. But again, that very well could have been a coaching thing. The only thing that we might need to be considering is that new head coach LaFleur is coming in from Sean McVay, who did in fact split the backfield last year. But Sean McVay didn't split the backfield until he felt comfortable with Blake Corum. He did and has with multiple running backs had them out there at the dumbest amount of snap counts, right? Like prior to the usage last year of Blake Corum, the previous year, Kyron was out there upwards of 90% of snaps, right? I don't think that Arizona will get that egregious with it, but I don't think they're going to be afraid to utilize Jeremiyah Love and have him sitting there playing like 40, 50% of snaps. That's a little silly there. And again, it's funny, Tyler Algier, if it really was coaching driven, that also should make us very concerned about in Tampa Bay, should also make us concerned about Bucky Irving because Zach Robinson, who was the offensive coordinator in Atlanta, is now the offensive coordinator in Tampa Bay with Sean Tucker, who was already sniping goal line touches at a clip of 7 touchdowns last year. Now, some of those were when Bucky was out, so it's not that dramatic. But again, at the end of the season, he was sniping from Bucky. So given the coaching situation, actually, I'm low-key, that's a situation I would be 10 times more concerned about like a Bucky Irving situation than I would ever be about a Jeremiyah Love situation, right? Lindell Wells says, the Cardinals offensive line is questionable. I feel sorry for Jeremiyah Love because that offense is one-dimensional and teams will just load the box. They can't. Trey McBride, Marvin, as much as we make fun of Marvin Harrison Jr., he's Marvin Harrison Jr., right? He can still, when he's out there running routes, he's still running them and he's still speedy, right? So Trey McBride, Marvin Harrison Jr., Michael Wilson. I mean, the problem is that, and that's why, like, if you look at the average yards per carry last year for Arizona, it was right on league average. And that is because, again, they open up the offense so much with the pass because they are so deep with weapons. And you can't really stack the box against them because of the fact that it can just be aired out, and Jacoby Brissett can air it out to all of those weapons. So if we get and we didn't even get the healthy version of we didn't get the healthy version of Marvin Harrison Jr. last year. So, I mean, try and envision Marvin Harrison Jr. healthy. God, please improve, man, in the offseason. Marvin Harrison Jr. healthy, knowing what we know about the fact that Michael Wilson with Jacoby Brissett had him looking like Marvin Harrison Sr., right? So, I mean, and then Trey McBride, my God, that's just so much talent for the pass catchers, man. It's tough. They really can't stack the box too much there. But yeah, the running backs there last year were just really, really sad, suspect, and really ashamed that they had to roll out. No offense to those guys, but what they were having to roll out was really crazy. So the fact that they even looked mildly competent with that was, yeah. So again, not the best offensive line in the world, but they did make several free agency ads that are pretty good. And will upgrade their offensive line. So it's not going to be a situation where it flips to the level of think about Seattle's offensive line and how it flipped from 2024 to 2025. That's not going to happen, but I wouldn't be shocked if they're league average. That's my expectation. I just slightly around league average, maybe a little below, but not as bad as the Raiders. The Raiders offensive line was nasty in another way. So we'll be all right. We'll be all right there. Going on to the next mailbag question here. We had a question, full PPR, 2-man keeper, keeping Jamar Chase, wide receiver 1, and need a number 2, Nabers or Rice. If my answer was, if you had to make a choice right now, I would play it safe with Malik Nabers. But assuming that this is you're waiting until August and then you declare, I would, if Rashee Rice is not on, not locked up anywhere at that time, I'm going with Rice. Right now, I have Nabers ranked 1 spot ahead. But if we get, again, to August and there are no new legal issues from Rashee Rice, who was cleared, there is no legal issue. Nothing came of all that stuff that happened in the early off season and whatnot. No issue from that. So he is good to play an entire season, and there is nothing currently on the radar that is going to keep him out. Also, we know at this point that Xavier Worthy is just a role player, not somebody that can really threaten his volume. Travis Kelce continues to age, right? So again, Travis Kelce will still get plenty of looks. There's still going to be plenty of volume for him, but Rashee Rice is the wide receiver 1 in that offense. And again, this is another situation where the overall numbers don't show it, but when you pinpoint it down to the actual time that he was on the field, the man was putting up fantastic numbers with Patrick Mahomes there. They have a fantastic connection. Touchdowns were coming. There's no flaw to the game because he plays so much in the slot that he sees a ton of receptions. So he's high volume. And then Mahomes also looks at him when he gets into the red zone. So he also gets the touchdown opportunities. And then we also have the potential added benefit this year. First of all, the good thing of, ball moving even better with Kenneth Walker, right? Because the run game is going to be so fantastic. But also, because we did see that uptick in volume on the ground from Patrick Mahomes last year, that's probably going to get reeled back in, especially once they get into the red zone. I would not anticipate a whole bunch of runs at the 5, right? Because he's coming off of that injury, which means more passes inside the 10, inside the 5, and obviously goal line looks for Kenneth Walker too, but more opportunities for Rashee Rice. So really there is no negative for him. We had a little bit of fear there for a moment because we had so many rumors of they could take Sadiq, they could go Mekhi Lemon, they could go, well, not Mekhi Lemon, they could go Jordan Tyson. So we had slight concerns there, but the fact that we got past that, it's just Rashee Rice rest of the season, for the entire season, as long as he is healthy, wide receiver 1 with massive upside. Realistically, if he stays out of legal trouble, it's crazy that we have to keep saying that, but I mean, he is what he is. If he stays out of trouble, I would not be shocked whatsoever if he had a top 5 season. This could be it. Stay out of trouble, man. Please. Good Lord. For the sake of for one of my dynasty teams, where I desperately need you, kiddo. Stay on the field. Stay on the field. So yeah, as crazy as it sounds, and I hate this because I love Nabers, but my problem is when I'm looking at Nabers, And we talked about this a lot with Jackson Dart. When I'm looking at Jackson Dart, when I'm looking at Malik Nabers, Cam Scattaboo, shout out to Cam Scattaboo, skating by on the Ashton Jeanty sweepstakes there. Darnell Mooney, I love. And who was the wide receiver added? Who was he? They added. Oh, who did they add? The new rookie is Malachi Fields. Malachi Fields as well. So we've got a nice little set there. I like all of those guys, but unfortunately I dislike Matt Nagy. So we also have to put a little notch of negativity on Nabers for the fact that his offensive coordinator is Matt Nagy, who ironically came from Kansas City. And we know what Matt Nagy is. A bad coordinator. And my problem also with that is that because John Harbaugh is not a play caller, we're at the mercy of Matt Nagy. That can't change at any point. This is not a situation where, you've got a head coach who's looking over his shoulder and it's like, okay, I got to take away your play calling. I got to make the calls. Harbaugh's not going to do that, right? So we are at the mercy of Matt Nagy with a young quarterback. Matt Nagy with a young quarterback. Do we love that? Never. We've never loved that. So God, I hate this. I hate this for everybody involved, but again, it just makes them go a little bit further down, just a smidge, right? So Rashee on the field is the one that I would have the preference there. Let's jump back to the chat here, and then we have one more question here. The question from Henry Odom, looking at the Dolphins draft, how can anyone feel comfortable expecting round one value out of Achane? I think Chase is a better pick. Thoughts? Okay, so Chase Brown. I read that. Chase Brown escaped the draft. We had some fear there. But we had, in considering the amount that they have used him, I really thought that they would make an investment. And nope, I think we're good to go, especially that we know that when the quarterback is competent, Chase Brown is just so consistent here. So Chase Brown, very, very safe pick, but he just does not offer the upside that Devon Achane has. And I will say, the good thing about Achane here, and while I do think that he can still return first-round draft value, is because he could easily have the most receptions on that team. Unfortunately, we're looking at the draft of Caleb Douglas. So if we're looking at a whole bunch of rookie wide receiver picks that made you scratch your head, right? Well, you look at San Francisco and them drafting Stribling. At least I can look at that and I can make the argument of he fits the offense. He can be their Jawan Jennings replacement. There's some upside. Okay, he's talented. Oh, no. Are there any flaws? No, not. He's quick. Okay. I mean, I can make the argument, right? I can make the argument. I can't make the argument for Caleb Douglas. Now, he is going to have a good chance of being the de facto wide receiver one, but I can't make that argument. I can make that argument for Chris Bell, but I have a hard time believing that Chris Bell is going to start the season healthy. They have zero. This is clearly a rebuilding season. They have zero reason to bring him on at an aggressive rate. It feels like it'll be kind of the similar situation of what we saw with Jameson Williams, his rookie season. There's no point, right? Let your guy just fully recover and bring him on in his sophomore season. So when I'm looking at that wide receiver core, there is nothing inspiring. So Devon Achane could theoretically be the lead receiver in that offense. Realistically, I would almost kind of put a decent bet on that. And also the good benefit here is that because Malik Willis is such an aggressive running quarterback, and we do expect him to be rushing a good 10 times a game, right? At this point, I would expect regularly 10 carries every single week from him. Because he continues to run and because he is a threat to vacate the pocket, that is going to constantly open up the opportunity for there to be increased lanes for Devon Achane. And if he gets a little sliver, big play city, right? So I think there's still going to be the nature of the offense, the pass catching upside. Malik Willis has zero problem checking down and big lane and big play opportunities there. I still feel good about Achane. I get it. And feeling like, you would want to go with the safer pick there. Brown would definitely be the safer pick. But Brown has that. Brown will give you top 10 for sure, but Brown can't get you top 3. Achane can get you top 3. So I'm willing to take that risk there with Achane for sure. Just Lift D1W says Kenyon Sadiq, 2 tight ends. Will the Jets run game be getting the Jets run game getting those offensive weapons for sure? Unfortunately, they got Geno Smith. And it is possible, again, because I talked about, the reason why I'm not as fearful for Jeremiyah Love as I was for Ashton Jeanty is the fact that the Raiders' offensive line was generationally bad. And so you could make the argument that, hey, Geno Smith he still got it. He was just in such a destitute situation with terrible coaching and a bad offensive line. But the problem is that I trust Seattle. And anytime Seattle, at this point, if Seattle has bailed out on a quarterback, Russell Wilson, Geno Smith, it tends to be a pretty good indicator that they're at the end, that the end is here. So I'm low-key scared, especially because the fact that the backup quarterback might be Russell Wilson. I'm concerned. I'm concerned that the Jets offense is going to be destitute yet again. And all of our beautiful pass catchers there, Garrett Wilson, Kenyon Sadiq, Omar Cooper Jr., and then Breece Hall, obviously, as well as a runner and a pass catcher. They've got so many weapons in that offense. It's such a beautiful, if they just, we'll look at it from this perspective, right? From a redraft perspective, we're just in a rough spot, right? But from a dynasty perspective, this should be an objectively bad team. And as long as they're an objectively bad team, right? Because they sold off all their superstars. They're still rebuilding. They're rebuilding that defense and whatnot. So as long as this is an objectively bad team and they get a top pick and can get a quarterback, hey, things are looking up in 2027. But for this year, I feel scared for them unless Geno Smith turns it around. JP Tay says, and I'm going to wrap this up soon because I realize I'm losing my voice. JP Tay says, contract year for Rice. Maybe slow build up coming back, but long term in Dynasty, it's Nabers and not even close. Yeah, long term in Dynasty. You're right. Yeah, in Dynasty, not even close. Just in your regular keeper league, for sure, Rice. But in Dynasty, at long term, you're just kind of at the whim of the will of the good Lord when it comes to Rashee Rice. Unfortunately, it's risky and it sucks because I roster him in Dynasty, and it's you can't trade him because you're not going to get the value out of him that you deserve, because legitimately he very well should put up top 5 numbers this year. Like, if he stays on the field, should be top 5 numbers. But who wants to make an investment into somebody that literally is not guaranteed to be on the field? I will take the person who is coming off of an injury, right? Whatever. But long-term, Malik Nabers is the better asset for sure. And everyone agrees that Matt Nagy sucks. Thank you on that one. Linda Wells says, mark my word, Patrick Mahomes will be back and better than ever. He'll be sporting a knee brace and staying more in the pocket like he did in college. When it comes to quarterbacks, in coming off of injuries, I feel like if anybody will recover and not just oh, he's a superhuman. No, I mean, somebody who is highly motivated, going to put in the work, is going to rehab properly, and will factually be on track to whatever timeline they set for him, as Patrick Mahomes, right? So I know this is scary territory for us, but because, in rankings, I see some people downgrading him, but I do trust him. And it sucks that, we won't get the rushing upside that we saw last year because it was juicy and it was so good to see him back at that level. But hopefully if we got an entire season of Rashee Rice, right, we should see an increase in touchdowns through the air here. So yeah, more volume passing wise, more touchdown opportunities. Overall, I do trust Patrick Mahomes to come back here. So yeah, I'm not too concerned about Mahomes' recovery and how it affects the rest of the offense there. I agree with you on that one. Greg Stalkup says, which team had the best draft overall? I think the Browns. They had a great draft. I love what they did because, again, we thought that they were going to because the Titans – actually, shout out to Arizona, right? Sorry to those listening on the podcast. If you're wondering, like I go silent for a second, I'm muting so I can cough. We'll wrap this up in a second. Shout out to Arizona for cascading this to where Carnell Tate went to, because if they didn't take Jeremiyah Love, then Jeremiyah Love to the Titans was what we were getting, right? But since they did, we got Carnell Tate to the Titans, which was my perfect fit there. So yay. And then after that, that ensured that that the Browns could not get Carnell Tate, and they did the right thing and did not draft a wide receiver there. Invest in the trenches, do the right thing for your team overall. Like, if you've got such a bad offensive line that your quarterback, whoever it is, can't get the ball downfield? What's the point, right? So make that proper investment in offensive line and then come around later and get you some pass catchers, man. And they didn't get just one pass catcher. They got two of the most promising pass catchers, right? You guys know how I feel about Denzel Boston, and I like Casey Concepcion as well. And honestly, the future should look like Concepcion and Boston 1-2. That's what it should look like. Jerry Jeanty is there. I looked at his contract. Logically, I don't think that they can move on from him. Not an ideal trade candidate. So I think he's just going to be there, right? He can be a cut candidate next year is what I saw. I think next year he could. But regardless, we should see this offense move forward in a positive direction. They got to figure out the quarterback situation. But I loved their draft. I think they did the exact right thing, which is shocking, right? But they had a fantastic, and honestly, they did kind of the right thing last year in trading their pick. So things are working out very well for them. So they just got to pull it together, figure out this quarterback situation, ironically. So we got the news today. We'll, close out somewhat with this. We got the news today that Deshaun Watson is looking like the inside edge for QB1. Yeah, no shocker there. But I will say this. Do not trust anything that comes out of the Browns camp. Don't. They have too many quarterbacks, and you're not going to hear anything negative about any quarterback who they actually don't want on the roster. This is what we saw last year. Remember how we just heard so many wonderful things about Kenny Pickett? Yeah, because they were trying to gaslight the league into getting rid of one of their quarterbacks, right? And they got rid of Kenny Pickett before the season started. Right now, they have, again, 4 viable quarterbacks there. And honestly, Taylon Green, probably the better situation for him to land in, because Todd Monken clearly didn't develop Lamar Jackson, but he has ample experience working with a quarterback that Jalen Green needs to transition into. Because Lamar Jackson, obviously far better prospect, far better passer, far more accurate, not the same issues as Taylon Green, right? But Taylon Green needs to figure out how to get to that point. And he needs to be molded by somebody who can make him a quarterback like Lamar Jackson. And Todd Monken seems like a very good candidate to do that, right? So good situation for him. So now you got, Deshaun and Shadur and Dylan Gabriel. Then we'll start hearing positive things about Dylan Gabriel looking super sharp in camp. So that they can try and trade him and pawn him off somewhere. So, and Taylon Green now, who I think should theoretically get the shot to make the roster over Dylan Gabriel, right? So, yeah, of course we're hearing Deshaun Watson, number 1 out of camp. Realistically, he's not a trade candidate whatsoever, but in case they, off the flat chance, just could gaslight somebody into, I don't think it'll happen, but if they just speak it into existence, I'm sure that's what they're, at the very least, you have to try to hype him up there. So I'm not shocked that we're having that information coming out of the Browns camp from their beat reporters. That's what they're going to say. They're going to speak glowingly of the quarterback situation, because somebody has to get traded. They're going to drum it up. And then we'll wrap things up here. GPT says, what are you doing at the back end of Dynasty drafts? Oh, God. With the bad landing spots and down class, I'm seeing 5th and 6th running backs go off the board at the 111 and 112 and 201. I'm scared. I start my drafts next week. Guys like Singleton and Coleman. So what are we doing in the back end of Dynasty drafts? It can't be running backs. It's got to be wide receivers. And some tight ends interesting as well. Right off the top of my head, I like Tanner Koziol a lot. I feel like there's a possibility that he could be a red zone look in Jacksonville. Britton Strange was cool and all, but not to the point where I think his job can't be taken. So that's an interesting one that I might take a late round shot at. Some of these tight ends that could have, for as much as I hate Justin Jolie's landing spot. But at this point, the picks are so bad at the end of the draft. Why not take a shot and see if he can ascend in as the Joker in Sean Payton's system, right? You just take shots of guys who could, outside of the running back position, who could be something, right? So pass catchers, right? Take our chances on the late round pass catchers there and see if something can come of it. Because we're getting guys that are steamed up, and I feel like you're not even going to be able to look at ADP or anything because it's going to be so wild. Like in one draft, you could have someone take, because, he could be, the wide receiver one. You could take Stribling at the end of round one. In one draft, you could see that. In another draft, you could see, everyone saying, I don't believe it. I don't believe he's that level of a prospect. And you could see him go at a third. Like it's going to be all over the place. So it's going to be very interesting. I guess theoretically, I'll have some picks to share with you guys next week. At the very least, I have one starting. And then I have a best ball redraft league that's starting next week. Yeah, and then that'll be fun. We'll talk more. It's going to be, it's at the back end of Dynasty drafts. I'm taking chances on talented pass catchers because the pass catchers were the bread and butters. Instead of chasing running backs that, they could be the handcuff, but really and truly they could easily be replaced next year. I'm just going to take a chance and chase the talented pass catchers, even if they're in bad locations, right? We could do that. Like a Skylar Bell, a bad location. We're going to take a chance there and see if he can ascend, right? Just start drafting talent. Pronto Joey says Fannin is the only sure thing in Cleveland. Yeah, for sure. And that you hope Sanders starts. I do too. I have an affinity for him. I defend him. And I think that under better coaching, right? Everyone will do better under better coaching. I don't like Kevin Stefanski for anybody. Hate it for Drake London. It's going to be a heavy Kyle Pitts season, people. He loves his tight ends. Fannin is he's the only thing that we can count on for sure. And then shout out to Donald Glaspie in the chat. Says greetings from Yosemite. And then hello to Who Hames in the chat as well. What's up? I appreciate you guys joining in. As I am losing my voice, I am going to go. And oh my God, I just realized that I completely forgot to watch The Boys. I watched usually when it's been coming out, I watch it super early in the day. And I realized that I forgot to watch it. So I have to go watch that. And then I got to watch. Okay. I'm just going to be up all night watching stuff, so I'm not behind and actually accidentally see spoilers. And I have to watch Survivor. So yeah, that's my night. I'm going to go put these kids to bed. I'm going to go watch The Boys, and I'm going to go watch Survivor. And that'll carry me through until midnight. I drank coffee before the show so I could be energetic. So it's all good. I appreciate you all joining in. Again, this is the Dear Miss Fantasy podcast, available on all podcast platforms. Appreciate the subscription. And then of course, any subscribers to my YouTube channel, it's Terra Time, much appreciated. And then also to Player Profiler as well, who this show is through. So I appreciate that. And also another little request there. I started a Substack. It's under It's Terra Time as well. Link is in my link tree. Appreciate it if you guys would subscribe to that. I'm going to be putting out free weekly newsletters, just expanding on fantasy football stuff, diving a little bit deeper into stuff. So it's brand new. Yay. I just launched it this week. So no subscribers. So if I would appreciate any support on that as well, that would be lovely. And then Apocalypse, real quick here, says, what do you think the split is between Jeanty and Washington? I don't think it'll be as dramatic as it was with, it could be, as it was with Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet. But I would anticipate more of like at worst, 60-40. 60-40 makes sense. That would be realistic, right? To where we don't have to worry about Jeanty. But he is getting spelled a good bit, especially on short yardage and some goal line opportunities there from Washington. So yeah, that's who can also pass catch, but just not as well as Jeanty, right? So I think Jeanty is very safe on the receptions area, which is fine. You know, Kirk Cousins doesn't have any problem with checkdowns. We'll see with Fernando Mendoza once he does eventually start. It'll happen at some point. He'll be on that. He'll be on that Jackson Dart Drake May track where you're not starting the season, but you're going to start at some point. But yeah, 60-40, I think is a very realistic split there. But appreciate you again. Thank you all, live every single Wednesday at 8 p.m. EST. I will talk to you all next week. Again, love you so much. Talk to you later.